And we're back with another episode of The State of Pro Wrestling. It's the best of pro wrestling for 2023. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here for the Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Game Source, and of course the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate you watching everything that we do. And if you're listening on all or any podcast outlet, please give us that magical 5 star, just like wrestling, 5 stars. Although now it's just become ridiculous with Dave Meltzer, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and everybody else that's decided to go beyond 5 stars. And like, what if they did that in movies as far as critical ratings? I'm no longer going to give this a 10. I think I'm going to give this a 12.75. How about that? Yes, absolutely. So it's crazy. Yeah, now that it's beyond 5 stars, it's now 6.75, 7, 8, 23 stars. I don't know. It just, yeah, I go by 5 stars. And I'm just, that's, call me old school, call me archaic. I ended it at 5 for me. But hopefully you've had a great year watching pro wrestling. It is, of course, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much again for watching this and truly appreciate it. Big special shout out to all the radio stations that also play our show as well. But here today to talk and discuss the state of pro wrestling is a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and catch every single episode of this awesome show, the PVD Cast. It is the master of the PVD Cast himself, the guy who has a stranglehold, has an iron claw on the PVD Cast itself. It is John Orlando. John, great to have you back, my friend. Happy holidays. Wishing you and all the family a blessed 2024 and hoping you will have a blessed year watching the world of professional wrestling in 2024 as well, my friend.
Well, I hope your holidays were great as well, and I hope that you enjoyed friends and family. And we're not that far away from a new year, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about some of the predictions that we may have for 2024, as well as recapping some of the good and the bad in the world of pro wrestling for this past year,
Yes.
and a hodgepodge of other things. So I'm very happy to be here. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
I also forgot to mention to you, and I'm going to put it in here in the notes here in a second for you, as far as an extra category that we mentioned it, I think, last year, and I forgot to mention it this year. And I'll go ahead and I'll pop that into the DM. So I don't want to give everybody I'm going to keep it a secret for now, but I'm going to go
Okay.
ahead and pop it in our DM here in a second. But
Okay.
it is the state of pro wrestling. It's our best of pro wrestling, plus also some predictions we will have at the end of the show as well. But of course, it starts off with the Iron Claw. The Iron Claw released earlier this month in December. As far as that's concerned, when it comes to the, I guess, the crowd response, the critical response, crowd response has been right along what's A24 expected. It is not going to become the hit that Everything Everywhere All at Once was. Let's just put it out there. But it is going to be something that does okay for them. But the critical response, from what I'm seeing and what I'm gauging, I've been watching tons of interviews on this. I've been watching tons of reviews on this. The critical response seems to be good, very good, probably in the top 25 to 30 films, seems to be where it lands on most people's lists, right in there. Does not seem to be a movie that's going to get any Oscar nominations or love. It's going to be thought of as far as maybe an honorable mention at best in several categories. But again, for a pro wrestling film that people are not pooping on, I think that's a step in the right direction. I do want to go ahead and credit the director for putting out such a movie that so many people are liking. But the question is, did the guys, as far as the real experts, the guys and gals in the pro wrestling, the guys and gals, as far as the experts are concerned, like us, did we or did John enjoy it? So, here today to talk about Sean Durkin's movie. First up, it is John Orlando. You have seen the Iron Claw. I plan to see the Iron Claw in theaters still because I at least owe it that respect as a pro wrestling movie. Your thoughts, my friend, on the Iron Claw?
Wow, this is going to be challenging because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Um,
You're
Let
gonna.
me
How can you spoil news that has been out there for 30 plus years, my friend? Newsflash: several Von Erichs have unfortunately passed away.
Okay, here's my biggest problem with the film. First, I'm gonna go out and say that I'm not one of those guys that was picky over every little detail that they enhanced for the tale. I mean, there are plenty of those.
Which
Uh,
would be me because I watched years of years and years and years of world class wrestling. World class wrestling was one of my favorite promotions in the day, and I think I'm scared. That's probably why I've been hesitant to see it because I will nitpick it to death as far as Sean Dustin. He is actually supposedly a big fan of world class, and from what I've seen from the trailers and the extended footage I've seen, I'm not sure he's given a great reimagination or just a reminder of what world class was.
well, me too. I was a huge world class fan as a kid growing up. The problem that I have is there's to me the lack of talking about Chris Von Erich kind of put a big damper on the movie. Um, I understand, and I've read why Sean Durkin decided not to include his story, but I find that to be, I feel like it's incomplete. I feel like the tale is incomplete, and I don't want to be morbid. I don't want to be
No, and
crass.
that's what Sean Durkin was in interviews has said he has tried to avoid that Chris Von Erich, which was the youngest Von Erich, who took his own life, believe in '91, if I'm not mistaken, because
Correct.
Terry took it last in '93. Uh, he was a very small, smaller, not very small. He was smaller for professional wrestling size. Imagine a wrestler the size of Rey Mysterio Jr. to give everybody a perspective out there. It probably around his size, his build, but without a lot of the athleticism that unfortunately, he did not have compared to Rey Mysterio Jr.'s. That's why his career was never going to be something that the other Von Erichs, even Mike Von Erich, who did not have a build for professional wrestling himself or an athletic gifts for professional wrestling himself, they still made him a almost believable enough wrestler out there. I should say, keyword is almost uh, in that regards. But Chris Von Erich, his name, his presence was omitted in the film because Sean Durkin thought it would be too depressing for fans out there because he was looking at it as far as showing his love for the film, but he was also looking at it from the standpoint that there's going to be a ton of people who had no knowledge of world class wrestling watching this film.
Well, and I would like to throw in there that Chris Von Erich also suffered from broken bone syndrome or brittle bone
Yes,
syndrome as well, which he was
yes,
constantly injured when he
yes.
did partake in matches. But I kind of disagree, Gerald, with that narrative, as I feel like
I did. I'm just telling you what his
sure,
his
yeah, no,
expectation.
I get what you
I
mean.
can't say I agree with it. I'm not
Yeah,
agreeing with it at all because that doesn't tell. Did they talk and discuss about Jack Jr., who was the original Von Erich that died, or Atkinson, who is the real name of the Von Erichs? Did they talk about him being electrocuted when he was a young boy as well? I don't. I'm not sure. You tell me.
well, they do cover that, and that's the thing is I'm like you took literally maybe 2 3 minutes of the movie to highlight Jack Jr. and you didn't go in depth. He had an accident, he died. You could have done the same thing with Chris,
Yeah.
and I understand that Durkin said he didn't want to make it a super long movie. First of all, I don't think the movie was 2 hours roughly. Maybe give a couple minutes. You could have gone a couple more minutes, or there's kind of a scene that I felt was very unnecessary that you could have devoted those couple of minutes to Chris's story and it basically cut out the sex scene. I was like, there's no point for this. This sex scene that's in here does nothing to drive the story. It's there, and I know people are going to say, well, John, it was there to show that Pam, Kevin's wife, was a take no prisoners woman back in the late 70s, early 80s. Okay, but that had already been established in previous scenes. So you didn't really need that. You didn't need her coaxing Kevin into a little, I don't know, a little fling in the car, if you will.
Yeah.
So I feel like I just feel like that was missing. That aside, I grade my movies whenever I talk about movies on the PVD cast. I give it a B. it's a solid movie. I think it does well for those folks that are not initiated in the
That's what I
story.
was going to ask you. Is it better for non-wrestling
Yes,
fans than
yes,
wrestling fans?
it's much better for non-wrestling fans.
That's
Yes.
what I thought. That's
Hmm.
what I thought. That's what I'm going to probably say when I'm coming out of theater. But yeah, I'm going to definitely take a look at it here in the not too distant future. But that's my main question. I think that people that have not, I think it's better for the uninitiated than the initiated on world
Hmm.
class professional wrestling. One of the things, though, I wanted to ask you was the televangelism, because one of their main stations that they were on. Now, remember, this was a show that was syndicated around the world, but their main station in Dallas was heavily influenced by televangelism. And as far as Pat Robertson, I believe,
Yeah.
owned the television. Yeah, this is stuff I didn't know.
Hmm.
And I found out this in the past couple of weeks in regards to doing research for this film. And as far as the beliefs, the Christianity, and I don't want to go as far as religion too much into that realm, because obviously we want to keep this, I've always tried to keep it straight and narrow on the pop culture, but I wanted to hear how much of that is introduced into the film as well,
Well, they do.
because it wasn't introduced or wasn't in the world class wrestling product. Let's
No,
put it that
the
way.
world class product was on the Christian Broadcasting Channel, which I did not know this either until a few years ago when I was listening to another podcast that did a big giant retrospective on world class wrestling. That any channel growing up on non cable, regular television, any channel that held the 700 Club was one of the CBCs, the
Mm.
Christian Broadcasting Corporation, and so to fill content, World Class signed a contract with them.
But the product wasn't heavily
No.
in, yeah, and that's the thing. As a fan, as a young fan growing up, I saw them bleeding, I saw them
Hmm.
violence, I saw the brawling all over the place, because the matches in the ring as a world class product weren't the best. It was when they got the excitement as far as the brawling, the intense action, the feuds, especially during the early to mid 80s. Those were the exemplary reasons why world class has touched the hearts of so many.
Agreed. They kind of mentioned that they're on a lot of a lot of stations, but they tinker with the timeline for ESPN. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
So,
Uh, but mainly the ESPN was showing reruns of
right,
theirs.
but
Yeah, of
it's
theirs.
not presented that way in the
Yeah,
movie.
not presented that the way.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I I don't want to say they were running rerun. They were doing some live shows, because remember, you saw the ESPN banner at the Sportatorium in the latter years
Right.
of what World Class slash USWA. So there was an ESPN presence there live, but mainly ESPN ran the show for years as far as the best of World Class was
Yes.
what they were. That's what
Yep.
it's mainly known for. But on that, but final thoughts on this, my friend. When it comes right down to it, you've said it's more for the uninitiated to world class as opposed to world class, but you said you enjoyed it overall. How are the performances in regards to that? I mean, Zach Efron is getting a lot of praise, even though physically he looks more like Kerry as far as his build than Kevin. Kevin was taller and skinnier, I should say, than what Zach Efron is. And then, I know the other actors in there also tried to go ahead and emulate themselves the role. The David Von Erich actor, he looks much more like the real life David Von Erich. That's the one I thought of the three guys that were mainly part of this. That's the one I thought that was most. But your thoughts, my friend? How'd the actors do?
The actors, I will say the gentleman, I forget his name, who played Fritz von Erich, did a very good job.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
Overbearing,
Yep.
a lot of they were, people were worried that they would, nice it up for Fritz von Erich's role, but Holt McCallany,
Yes.
uh,
Yes.
yes, he has been thought of in some circles in a supporting actor role, but yes, as far as nominations are concerned, so yeah, I heard he's did very well in the role.
I think Lily James does a very good job as well as
Oh, that's
Pam.
awesome. That's
I
good
think
to
she
hear.
did a great job. The one that did the worst job is, I don't know who they got to play Ric Flair, but
Yeah, that's the
whew,
guy everybody's talking about.
whew, man, it was not good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Aaron Dean Eisenberg.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did not do a very good. I'm sorry, no disrespect to him, but he just they that was not Ric Flair. I don't know who that character was, but that was not Ric Flair. But like I said, I think closing out with my review is I think, look, if you're a wrestling fan, go and enjoy it. If you're a world class fan, go and enjoy it. Know that there's going to be subtle changes and large changes, but overall, it does tell a very good story. And I think it does a pretty good job of presenting the emotion and the facts and whatnot. So, like I said, I gave it a solid B. I was hoping that it would be an A plus because of being a big fan, but still, I don't think it disappointed me. I didn't leave the theater going, that was just a load of crap. I still enjoyed it.
Well, it's funny because you said Sean Durkin. As I said earlier, Sean Durkin was a fan of World Class. But in the first moment, I thought, "Oh my God, it's going to be a different narrative as far as the way it's represented on screen." It's when you see in the trailers the first shot of the Von Erichs coming out 2 and 1. If you remember World Class, they always came out single file. They were instantly, grabbed by the
Mobbed.
fans. Yeah,
Yes.
mobbed by the fans. There would always be like guys in cowboy hats as far as security helping them down the aisle, whatnot. But it was really packed, really tight, and it was presented in such a way as far as for more photographic purposes in an incorrect way. But and then I'm just like saying to myself, okay, I got to understand that Sean Durkin is presenting this in a different light to a different audience than for me who watched it every bit. So when I go in, I'm going to have those expectations on enjoying it for what it is
Hmm.
and also understanding what it isn't.
Hmm.
All right, my friend. It is the state of pro wrestling. It is John Orlando from the PVD cast, our wrestling film connoisseur, so to speak, right there for you. Got to go ahead and catch what he's doing each and every time out the PVD cast. I want to go ahead and mention right now, if you have your thoughts on the best of pro wrestling, please let us know in the comments below, or let us know. Popculturecosmos at yahoo.com or popculturecosmos anywhere on social media. But it is that time, my friend. We will go into the best of pro wrestling for the next half hour or so before we get into our predictions for pro wrestling, which you said you're very interested in. I have three
I
that
have
I
three as
put out
well.
there. Yes. So I put in, as far as, and I added one late candidate as far as it's concerned. So that one I'll let you have it. That one I'll probably put near the end, just to let you know the one I added in
Okay.
there. So to give you some time to think about that. So I ask you, my friend, we're going to start off with. Let's go ahead with best non-wrestling moment of 2023 that did have an impact on the pro wrestling world today.
Um, I'm gonna go with a real stretch on this one, but I
Okay.
thought it was such a cool idea.
Okay.
I'm an owner of it as well. I'm gonna say the best moment I can come up with is the Midnight Express action figures. I'm gonna go with that because, and I know,
Jim Cornette would be thanking you at this point in time.
well, but it is a very interesting. I collect action figures here and there. I'm not a huge like buy every week the newest releases, but I feel like that was something special because it's got Bobby, it's got Dennis, it's got Jim Cornette, it's got Stan Lane. Bobby unfortunately is no longer with us, so the fact to have what will be the
He
last
passed
bit.
away this year, I believe. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
I think it was last year to be
Was it
honest, Gerald.
2022?
I think it was
Okay.
2022.
Okay. Time flies, and unfortunately, that's the case. So as we remember, great win, my friend.
Yeah, and I just thought this is going to be the last thing ever. Not that I mean I don't hate the Midnight Express. I wasn't a big giant fan of the Midnight Express. I respect what they've done in the industry, but I was like, you know what? I'm buying it. It made me just from hearing the sales pitch through Cornette's podcast and thinking about it, it made me reach into that wallet and fork over some cash to get the set, and I'm not disappointed. So there you
There
go.
you go.
There's my response to that category.
I do want to give special honorable mention to the Iron Claw. because
Hmm.
the Iron Claw brings the spotlight on pro wrestling, even though it is a tragedy. It is presented and portrayed as a tragedy. It is something that does bring from what I've seen, a mostly positive spotlight on professional wrestling. The interviews that have been done with Kevin Von Erich, also as well John Cena appearing at the premiere. People are talking about it left and right as far as in a positive manner. It's not been a disgrace of the industry as far as it's concerned, no matter what the people inside think about it. It's been something that's been a positive. It's been thought of for the most part very well by most critics. So I see it as a positive for the industry overall, even though it came out of tragedy, a
Hmm.
great tragedy of all those deaths. And again, we have our problems with the film and issues with the film, but that's disregarded by the fact that, again, respectfully disregarded by the fact that, again, it's been received well by the public at large. If that's, I phrased it incorrectly, but yes, it's been received public, not to disregard anyone's opinion on it, but I'm just saying it's been it's been received well by the public at large. And in fact, it's been embraced by both major promotions here in the United States. AEW with, of course, MJF appearing as Lance Von Erich. Please tell me your thoughts on that off screen as far as MJF is concerned,
Okay.
because that one I have an issues of the casting on the MJF side. I'm a huge MJF fan, as we both have noted over the course of the years, but him playing Lance Von Erich is like the exact polar opposite of a character he should play, because that's in reality that Lance Von Erich is the exact polar opposite as a wrestler as he was. But I digress. Uh, the way it was received well by AEW and WWE. AEW, and they've now brought on the Von Erichs for AEW and Ring of Honor. Kevin Von Erich has made appearances. They've helped promote the film, but so has the WWE. I got
Hmm.
emails from the WWE helping to promote this film. So when you have a film, or when you have a subject, or when you have an individual or group, a name like the Von Erichs that's been promoted by both companies and supported by both companies, it is something that, again, has to be seen as a positive for this industry that's had so much darkness, including the Von Erich tragedies. So I just wanted to put that as an honorable mention. Your thoughts on that, my friend, before I give you my big winner in this case?
I agree with you 110%. I think that it has made a big impact, and and agree with you. It is a positive. It's shown in a positive light, despite the fact that it's a tragic story.
Yeah.
The persistence of Kevin and his family to push on and whatnot. Yeah, I agree with everything that you said.
Last thing on it, I should have asked you as far as review. Were you okay with the fact that there was no influence brought in by Kevin Von Erich? Kevin Von Erich was just, I guess, found out and spoke to Sean Durkin a little bit, but yeah, basically the story, pretty much the most of the movie was not influenced as far as as directly influenced by Kevin Von Erich. Like, you don't see Kevin Von Erich on the writing team or executive producing or anything like that. And then also the wrestlers. I know that I've heard the story of how Michael Hayes is upset that the Freebirds were used without his permission. I have not heard Ric Flair's comments, but I'm eager to find that out as far as Ric Flair and his thoughts, especially the way it has been perceived. So, are you okay with all that?
Yes, I'm absolutely fine with that.
Okay.
I think that if you had Kevin on staff, I have a feeling that that would have made things a little bit trickier in terms
Mhm.
of writing the script.
Yeah.
So his absence, I think, was a positive for the
Okay.
production, the artistic production of the film.
Okay. Fair enough, my friend. So I give you my winner for the non-wrestling story that involved and eventually affected pro wrestling, and that to me was TKO purchasing the WWE.
Hmm.
So now they are a combined entity with the UFC, and $9 billion later, the WWE is no longer a McMahon-owned property per se. Now, obviously, he's still, someone who is Vince McMahon, someone who's very, very still high up in the company, just below Ari Emanuel, and obviously he owns a ton of shares, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he, the McMahon dynasty per se of the pro wrestling industry for decades and decades leading back to his father and the influence that he had in the industry. It's not there what it once was. And I think that to me is the biggest non pro wrestling news item that is pro wrestling related in some form or fashion, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I feel
Maybe
like
not to our listeners out there, but yeah, I
no, I mean it when it happened, we talked on an episode of the State of Pro Wrestling about what a monumental shift this was in the
yes.
industry. And so to not pay attention to it, I think is erroneous. And I just laugh because I feel like I totally overlooked it with something that is more more personal to me
More
that I
personal.
had.
You went with a I went with a major $9 billion purchase. You went with action figures, my friend. We are true pro wrestling fans indeed, my friend. That's
Yes,
no
we are.
worries. Yes. Once
So
again, it is John Orlando for the PVD cast. John, okay, now we get into some better awards that are, I would say, a little bit more appealing, a little bit more enjoyable to think about. Because when I sat down and had to think about all the different non-wrestling moments of 2023 that impacted pro wrestling, I was kind of difficult. Let me weigh in. Let me think about it. Which one was, and whatnot. Let me go ahead and start off with the tag team of the year, my friend. So, who are your two individuals, or it could be, a conglomerate like the, Judgment Day, or damage control that work as a unit. Who is your tag team of the year for 2023?
you said it, Judgment Day. I feel like they have had a pretty good run in 2023. They've kept that group interesting by adding
Mhm.
in JD McDonough. Although I'm not a huge fan of
He
his
is the
work.
Buddy Roberts of this group. Let's just be honest with you on that.
You know what? Good call. Good call. Absolutely.
Let's just be honest. Let's just be out there. He's the one when you don't want the other guys and Rhea Ripley to do the job. Guess who does it?
Yeah. So I feel like they've done a good job of keeping the Judgment Days strong, keeping them fresh. I would like to see more of Rhea do kind of her own thing a little bit more, especially when it comes to the women's division. But I think that they overall this year have been the best tag team out there. Much better than some of the other spare parts tag teams we've seen, like Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, et cetera, et cetera. I think that they've been more cohesive as a unit, and I like that when it comes to factions or tag teams.
So there you go. Excellent choice. My team, because FDR, I don't think had as strong of a year this year as they did in 2022. I think AEW, which at one time had and has, if you look at it, several good tag teams. Some of them I think are misused. Why you're having the Hardys as low as on the card as you do when you need some sort of name recognition is just baffling beyond to me. And if you have Edge and Christian, we've talked about that story as far as is concerned. That tag team is you could have them there. Now they may well be a tag team of 2024 when they eventually come back together to go on their final run together, et cetera, et cetera. But you have tag teams that are known that are not getting the kind of pub. FDR, again, as I mentioned, somehow you've managed to go ahead and lessen their value over the course of the year in AEW, which I think is kind of discouraging to me. WWE has had some tag teams in and out, but Judgment Day has got to be of high consideration for me as well. But I picked a little bit different out of the box. I for WWE, I think I'm going with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, and
Okay.
the reason why was because earlier this year the storyline and the bloodline storyline I think needs to get some recognition. As far as now, the bloodline storyline is kind of like it's okay, it's not going in the places that it once did. But earlier this year, when it made Sami Zayn a superstar, when it got us talking and really upset about him not winning the world title from Roman Reigns, when it came to the reunification of him and that how that played out between him and Kevin Owens, and then ultimately those two getting the world tag titles together in the WWE. That to me, I think was really important. I mean, they were able to thrive off of that moment at that point in time. And They just recently teamed up before the end of the year back again here in Canada. So it was nice to see that reunification, but it doesn't look like it's going to continue for any length of time because they're on separate shows, which again, I don't even get me started on that one because that's like an hour and a half long conversation on that. But the branding and all that. I want to go ahead and say I think that those two were at the peak of that bloodline storyline. I think really were able to capitalize on it. And I think they get the slight nod over Judgment Day, but I can't say I blame you for going the way of Judgment Day as well.
Well, something that you mentioned, I wrote down a lot of those tag teams in AEW just out of curiosity, and
Mhm.
all the ones that I wrote down, like the Acclaimed, like FTR,
Had a run,
yeah,
then they've just been pushed to the side.
they showed
FTR,
up 3 weeks in a row on TV, and then they've been gone. So
yeah.
I couldn't consider them,
They were
and
thrown through a fake window, and then there you go.
yeah, and so I mean, it was really tough, and that's why I started when I started listing WWE teams. With respect to Zayn and Owens, but I feel like just as you mentioned, I kind of disqualified them because I felt like they're not going to stay together. This
Yeah,
seems like a short term run,
and I don't blame you.
and I just felt that Judgment Day had overall had a much bigger and longer trek this year of great matches, and
Mhm.
so that's why I selected them.
All right. Well, you've got your tag team of the year. I think it's an excellent choice as well. Let's go with biggest surprise of the year, my friend. Big surprise of the year. I want to hear your thoughts on who the biggest or what was the biggest surprise of the year for you this year.
80,000 in Wembley.
Really?
That surprised me. I really honestly I did not have
81,030 or whatever the number is.
right,
They'll
right.
correct you on that. So
Okay.
Will Osprey will show you his tattoo.
Well, I honestly didn't think that they were going to do it. I'm glad that I was pleasantly wrong on
Mhm.
that because wrestling needs that.
Of
The
course.
overall sport of wrestling needs that. But I was very skeptical. I really was that they were going to sell it out. I thought that they might be able to get half that if they were lucky. So for me, that was the big surprise is hey, you did it. You got butts in seats and quite a number of butts in seats.
There you go. Absolutely. For them, we have, however many issues we've had with AEW this year, and I will go that into bigger detail in another category. Um, you got to compliment them on that. And the
Yes.
fact that they're following up right now and it's trending towards 60, 70,000 again, paid. The 81,000 is a paid as far as concerned. Attended, I think, if, depending on who you talk to, actually is around in the low 70s. But again, still remarkable achievement for a non WWE entity in London. So yes, definitely looking forward to seeing what they do to back it up in 2024. But I still have some concerns coming out of it, which I'll describe later on in another category. But we'll go ahead into that in a little bit. But my biggest surprise of the year, L.A. Knight.
Good
Yeah,
one. That's a good one. That's a
uh,
very good one.
he could have easily been one of those wrestlers that was let go, sent on future endeavors earlier this year when several wrestlers were laid off in and around the sale of TKO purchasing WWE. He could have been one of those affected. His career could have gone that way as a wrestler reaching his 40s, who has never really made it, has had a good gimmick. He wrestles pretty good. He can talk really well, but he's never given himself 100% the opportunity, or never. The company has never, whatever he's winning with whether it's Impact, whether it's NWA, who you name it, have never really bought into you know Sean Record, aka LA Knight, his whole demeanor. No company has ever bought into him. Even when they made him a world champion at Global Force, it just never bought into and produced him as a bona fide superstar or megastar, as he would say. This year, we saw that he may helped make himself. He came in, he was going to be the fodder for the late Bray Wyatt in the lights out match that we saw starting off of the Royal Rumble, but to put himself in that category first, to get himself started there, catapulted him to even better issues coming out of that match. It's one of those situations where you lose, like for instance, Steve Austin and Bret Hart from WrestleMania many years ago. Steve Austin lost, but in the manner that he lost, made him a public face, made him a huge star, and we saw what happened for there. LA Knight, he did lose against Bray Wyatt at the Royal Rumble, but he started to grow. His popularity started to grow. He started to still have that attitude. He kept that attitude, but really just started to get people behind him. People were organically, it's the perfect situation, John, where people were organically
Mhm.
starting to cheer this guy. The first time I really thought this guy was going to be something special, that his career was going to go in that fashion, was in Saudi Arabia, where they were chanting LA Knight, yeah, and he wasn't even on the card in Saudi Arabia. He wasn't even in Saudi Arabia, I don't believe, and they were chanting his name. So that's really when it got going. He appeared later, I think, in Washington, D.C., and a couple other places. They started really getting behind him, and the company, much to their chagrin, you could see they were very hesitant on giving him that push. Finally, started to go ahead and giving him that push he's needed. Now, mind you, do I think they should have continued it even further with a world title run? Yes,
Mhm.
but they haven't yet to do that. And now with CM Punk, with a more known entity to them, and also Cody Rhodes, I think that unfortunately, I don't think he'll ever get his chance where he's going to get the title and get a run, a proper run. I'm hoping I'm wrong. That's not a prediction for 2024. I'm hoping I'm wrong on that. But LA Knight is my biggest surprise of 2023.
At this point, I think we may have to admit that the best LA Knight right now can shoot for is a US or Intercontinental title run.
Yeah, and that's to me is disappointing.
No, it is. It is, but I think
You
that
got to take that skyrocket. You got to take that
Mhm.
rocket, and you got to take it all the way. And they didn't do that. They didn't do
Correct.
it with Sami Zayn, so they didn't do it with LA Knight.
Correct. Absolutely.
But my friend, we've got more to talk about here on the show. The promotion of the year, promotion of the year. Your thoughts on what you think is the best promotion run this entire year?
Ooh, this was a tough one. Um, I went with the WWE. I just stayed tried and true. Sure, it's the McDonald's of professional wrestling, if you want to call it that, to use an analogy. I just feel like they've had a lot of momentum. I think the creative has shown some bright spots. I think moving NXT over to CW here soon I think that's going to be a big time impact on WWE programming. I stuck with the tried and true, as I said, the WWE.
Okay, there you go. Got two right here. I mean, their numbers were up. It's the fact that Paul Levesque, aka Triple H, is and has been under control for most of the entire year, with very little interfering from Vince McMahon. To what levels? It was actually a little bit maybe in the front part of the year, but actually as the year go on, he got gained more and more control. You can see it in the storylines. A lot of his footprints are all over the place, and it's led to a great success, a better success for the company going forward. Mind you, they didn't get the sale and didn't get the money from SmackDown as far as the new deal that they wanted, but still, the numbers are better. Their competition is not, been having those same kind of numbers, which we'll go into. But yes, it's got to be the WWE. New Japan, obviously, they're going through some changes there with the recent announcements at the top, so you can't give them the ticket. You could also say MLW for. I don't want to say they won the lawsuit, but they kind of, when they set out of the court and suddenly found some assets to go ahead and sign some new wrestlers, you got to say to yourself, okay, maybe they had a pretty good year, but how long that will last, we'll have to wait and see. Impact, TNA changing to Impact, whatever. That obviously, if they're in the midst of change, that's not bodes well for them. NWA, they managed to kind of squander a TV deal based off of a cocaine snorting backstage promo or something like that at the NWA Samhain pay per view, which has cost them dearly. So they definitely don't deserve consideration. So yeah, when all comes down to it, the McDonald's of wrestling, the WWE is the choice to go, my friend.
Something we also forgot to mention is WWE is going to work with All Japan.
Yeah.
Like that to me also could have been a big surprise as well because
Yeah.
one, All Japan's kind of been on a downturn over the last few years,
Yeah.
and now they're pairing up with the company, so that's going to be great for both of them. I think for both WWE and
I
All
hear you.
Japan.
Absolutely. I always love it when the WWE starts to reach outside and gain more experience, but also gives them a better look at some of the wrestlers that could appear for them in the upcoming days. And Stardom has been talked about as well as far as a possible organizational cooperation between them and the WWE. So definitely looking forward to seeing what's coming up there. All right, my friend. There's more to talk about on today's show. The biggest disappointment of 2023. Your thoughts, my friend, on 2023.
Well, this one is actually somewhat of a situation that began before 2023, but it all came to a head in
Mhm.
2023. And that is how AEW handled the CM Punk debacle. It's the biggest disappointment, it's the biggest botch, it's the biggest screw up, whatever you want to say. You and I have talked about it many times on this show that both parties are at fault. I'm not waving the CM Punk flag and said he deserved to he should have front face locked him and should have punched him and blah blah blah. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that both sides were in the wrong and both sides squandered an opportunity to do something big with, as Jerry Jarrett used to say, wasn't it that oh shoot, personal problems create cash or whatever,
Mhm.
whatever the I can't remember. Now I'm on the spot, I can't remember the saying, but they had an opportunity that if they could have worked something out.
Controversy creates cash.
There we go. We'll go with that, Eric Bischoff. All right. But they squandered an opportunity. And even if they didn't want to do business, maybe those parties, you still handle it in a corporate manner. You just can't. eh, Again, it boggles my mind how they didn't even handle the situation correctly. And so this was a no brainer. This was probably the first thing, truth be told, while I was sitting in the airport and you had sent the message about what we were talking about, I started writing down ideas on my or typing ideas into my phone, and this was number one, easy, hands down, biggest disappointment, biggest blunder, whatever.
Leading off into that, my friend, my most disappointing of 2023 is how AEW. We were talking about this on a show, on an episode of the State of Pro Wrestling. What AEW can AEW capitalize on the big, huge 80,000 plus individuals packing all in? Can they take that momentum and drive it forward? And not only did they not take that momentum drive forward. They almost drove it off the cliff. Obviously, you saw what happens with the situation with CM Punk. Now, CM Punk is on their largest competitors' TV shows on a weekly basis. Letting that happen and letting that go, I think, is obviously something that they will regret financially moving forward. That hits the pocketbook hard. I also dislike the fact that they have mishandled the Christian Edge feud, instead putting that first match on public television instead of on a pay-per-view, because they don't have any non-MJF storylines outside of that one that really interest people. It was absolutely mind-numbingly stupid. So I just think that what they've done, and the ratings haven't reflected that. Now they've actually petered off, but for a while they were in a pretty bad state as far as their declining ratings are concerned, coming off of All In. And again, to me, I think that's something they do have a future still in of course that what we're going to talk about in sure in our predictions. But yeah, definitely disappointing for AEW. Their look and their promotion, you with that kind of huge gate, that kind of huge day, they should have taken that and used that as a springboard to greater success, and ultimately it hasn't been the case.
Agreed. I mean, I would have loved to seen a program with Samoa Joe and CM Punk for a few months
Yeah.
coming out of that, even though that was supposedly the end of their storyline. I would love to have seen that. I mean, obviously you can't help the fact that Adam Cole got injured. I mean, injuries happen, but I would have liked to seen continued on with that as MJF and Adam Cole as ROH tag champs. Or it just to me, I agree with you as well. It was a squandered opportunity, but I'm getting to a point, and I don't want to be negative. I don't want to feel this way, but I feel like anytime there's a big buzz surrounding something in AEW, they're just going to fumble it,
Yeah.
and that's
I
sad to
agree.
say.
I agree with you, my friend. So I ask you now, another part of our year-end awards. Best and worst in pro wrestling. We started with the best in pro wrestling as far as some of what we've seen so far. We talked about the biggest disappointment of 2023. What is your worst pro wrestler or wrestlers of 2023, my friend?
Oh my. Oh my. Easy. Grayson Waller.
Okay.
I don't get Grayson Waller. I don't understand what his character's supposed to be. I just don't get it. And I think he's awful in the ring. His talk show is abysmal. I just don't get it. I don't what it's not like he's a huge, 6'8", jacked like Batista type of dude. And supposedly he worked for a couple of years in Australia, in the indies down in Australia. But I don't get it. I don't see the fascination with Grayson Waller at all.
Well, I see it like some of the wrestlers that were recently let go this year in regards to or left the organization, like Lacey Evans, Elias, Hit Row. Some of those guys were very much much maligned as far as is
Mhm.
concerned. There's a lot of below average wrestlers that have appeared on WWE television that a lot of them were let go, and WWE's been smart about those who are just not advancing or succeeding or catching on with the fans in such a form or fashion. Some of it may be because of the way they are, as far as they're just whatever they bring, or some of it's the way that as far as the direction that the company gives for them. Whatever doesn't work, it just doesn't work. We've all talked about Baron Corbin. We thought I was going to have to name this the annual Baron Corbin Award, but he's actually done okay in NXT because he's found new life in there. Basically, the last step before you're out the door. So he's found new life there. I'd probably say Karrion Cross because
Oh
do you
yeah.
actually care about Karrion Cross? I don't. And I think that's what matters to me the most.
And I'm sorry to say this, I don't even care about Scarlett. And I think
Yeah.
that there you have the opportunity as a very attractive woman to garner more attention, but I I don't pay attention to either one of them. The way that they've been booked, the way the character has been developed or not developed, it soured me on him.
Match of the year, my friend. The best match
Ooh.
that appeared, and this was actually in the state of pro wrestling. This was actually a really good year for pro wrestling matches, I think, as far as maybe not the best. It's not 1989, but it's still like it was one of the best years for video games. It's one of the best years for pro wrestling matches. I thought that when the WWE can showcase out their several four-star plus matches, I think that's a great year because the fact is AEW always has one thing we might malign AEW for a lot of things, but they do have a lot of great wrestling matches on television, free and also on pay-per-view. New Japan, All Japan, those great organizations have their share of five plus star matches. Will Ospreay was just tremendous all over the place. Triple A also had its share of good matches as well. But what is your best match of 2023?
Well, before I reveal that, I would like to just mention that I went with the mindset that I had to have watched the match.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to select it based on a couple of clips I saw or whatnot.
Yeah, I've not seen all the entirety of Will Ospreay matches in New
Correct.
Japan, so
Right. That's a
otherwise
prime
that might change
example.
my mind.
Yeah, that's a prime example of what I was meaning. But there's still, when you eliminated that, there was a lot of matches. And I went with this one because I felt in an era where people do not have any psychology, where storylines are not told, or excuse me, or stories are not told in the ring, that this was an extremely great example of a story being told in the ring, and that is Gunther versus The Miz at Survivor Series. I really think that was
Really?
yes.
That I did not think that Gunther match would be the one that you would be talking about. Wow, that's
I
a
just
shock.
because as I watched it, Gerald, I was like, this is a story that I am following. The Miz, the guy that's not supposed to be there because he was nothing more than a reality show star, and he's worked his way and he's won titles. He still feels disrespected. He's going against the Ring General, the guy
Mhm.
that's been the unstoppable force. How is Miz even going to be able to have a shadow of a chance of beating him? I was invested in this match. I really felt like it told such a great story in a time when we sometimes don't get that.
Gunther's had some incredible matches. I really thought you were going to lean towards my second match of the year. It was the number 2 match as far as at WrestleMania with him, Drew McIntyre, and Sheamus. I really thought that was a very hard hitting match, just as good as Clash at the Castle between Gunther and Sheamus. But my best match of the year is, whether or not the people out there have a tendency to believe it or not, MJF and Bryan Danielson. They had a 60-minute Iron Man match. It was truly, incredible to see MJF, who's been much speculated on as far as people saying, "Well, can he give you the classic matches that you need as a world champion? He's great on the stick, but can he give you what you need? Can he build his body up? Can he get into the type of shape that's needed?" Well, he did. He did everything that you've asked him for. Unfortunately, AEW has not provided him with the best of surrounding talent and or booking around him. But be that as it may, I think he's still able to go ahead and thrive. And I think one of the reasons why was his incredible matches that he had over the course of the past year. And the best of the best was a 60-minute Ironman match against Bryan Danielson. The creative way they used as far as to finish the match, the fact it was still on the fact that the way that he was able to predict and tell you how he was going to win his matches and then end up winning when he was doing that shtick, that was absolutely just fantastic. How he was still they were able to go ahead and create storyline matches so that it ended up being exactly the way he had forecasted it. But it's just a truly tremendous match, and that's probably my best of the year for 2023.
And I think that match also highlighted the fact that we can just stop with he's not very good in the ring.
Yeah,
I think that squashed that,
yeah.
which I've always thought he's been very good in the ring. So I was never a believer of that. But yeah, those
Just
two,
like
those
Miz, probably squashed that as far as working with Gunther. If you get the right dance partner for some of
yeah,
these guys, that's all it takes.
yep, absolutely.
All right, my friend, 2 last categories and then our predictions for 2024. Who is your rising star of 2023?
Well, um, I went with somebody that I've actually met. I've actually spoken to as I've worked a couple of independent shows with this individual,
Mhm.
and got signed by AEW to work Ring of Honor.
Mhm.
And I think she's had some really good showings against people like Jade Cargill, Red Velvet, Athena. Still a very young competitor, but I think the rising star is Billy Starks.
Okay, excellent choice. There you go. Definitely looking forward to seeing where her career is going to
Hmm.
end up. She's now in consideration at this point in time when we're talking for the AEW Women's Television title. I guess is what they've introduced. That there are several individual ladies out there that are going to be vying for it. So
Is it
yes,
is it AEW or ROH? I think it's ROH, isn't
ROH,
it?
ROH.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
ROH.
Well, it's this. Yeah, owned by it. Yeah. Yeah. But yes, you're right. ROH television title. Yes, you're right on that. The women's version of it. So, yes, hopefully she'll become successful for that, and obviously wishing her career the best going forward. But my individual wrestler of the year, as far as the wrestler that has the most promise, the shining star of 2023, the rising star of 2023, is an individual that AEW should have signed, that is looking like an individual that will sign with the WWE, and that is Gilia.
Yes.
Gilia, I believe that's the way it's pronounced. I always mispronounce it when I'm talking about it off camera. But she has had some incredible matches. She is a rising star. She is on the radar of most major promotions around the world. Her time in Japan, incredible as far as what she's been able to produce, and she reminds me of a star that has it coming from Japan, like we're seeing with Io Sky, like we're seeing with, of course, Asuka, who seems to have led this whole entire contingent from Japan as far as ladies who have that it factor coming over and succeeding in America. Hana Kimura, who unfortunately tragically took her life. I thought she had that it factor, and I thought she was, if she had, stayed in the industry, she would have really gone to really high places. I see that same for Gilia going forward as well. And it's rumored that she will be that she's leaning as we head into the new year towards a towards a contract with the WWE.
And she is my female wrestler of the year, by the way. I'm gonna
Oh,
let
there
the
you go.
cat out of the bag just
Uh,
because, yeah, I love the fact that she fights that strong style, but can
yep,
also wrestle other styles as well. The
yep.
promos have been great, even though she seems to not have a full grasp of the English language, but still was great. And likewise, I've read where the WWE has kept an eye on her, and that kind of WWE doesn't sign you know schlubs most of
Yes.
the time. So especially if they're going to go to another
She
country to
is the
go get
type of
somebody.
woman that can transform the AEW roster, and I think it's a serious mistake that Tony Khan is not going to go ahead and sign her away.
Well, smart for her because there's already what 35 women on the roster as it is,
But
and
you don't have any that stand. Tony Storm is a nice gimmick as far as it's
oh yeah.
concerned, but I just it's not transcending the division like a great women's wrestler can. And you have several that are on the WWE roster already. And so, if that's the case and she does end up going to WWE, they're getting themselves a great wrestler. She's performed well for Stardom. And like
Mhm.
you said, it's your Woman Wrestler of the Year, which brings us to our Wrestlers of the Year. So you started off with Gilia and how impressive she has been. She is your choice for Woman of the Year. So who is your male Wrestler of the Year?
I'm going to go with Seth Rollins because I feel like he's had some really solid matches. The back injury, again, I feel like that back injury is inflated a little bit. I'm sure that he's probably got a little bit of a hitch in his wagon, as they say, but they're playing it up. He does a great job with it. I think that he's just overall been the best solo male performer
He has
in the
been the
sport of pro
steady
wrestling.
for them.
Yes.
He and
Yes.
Gunther have been the steadies for them as far as the entire year. I cannot disagree with you on that, my friend. I cannot disagree with you on that.
So, yeah, so Seth Rollins and, as I mentioned, Gilia as my two wrestlers of the year.
Excellent choices. Seth Rollins was close for me. The only reason why I didn't give him male wrestler of the year was the fact that he is wrestling as a title for a title that was brought back because they don't want to wrestle Roman Reigns enough. So that was my deciding factor there. But you're right, he was the backbone of the WWE this year. Dominic Mysterio, I know, was thought of very highly as far as his contributions and where his rising star is. He was actually close to being my rising star 2023, but he is already there. I think as a
Hmm.
heel, he gets natural heat that a lot of heels in the industry would love to have that he gets, and absolutely wishing his career success like it already has been. But my male wrestler and female wrestler of the year, my female wrestler is Rhea Ripley. I know Rhea
Hmm.
Ripley is a safe pick, but
Hmm.
her work with Judgment Day narrowly gets it out over Io Sky, who has performed tremendously as the other women's champion for the WWE. Both have been tremendous assets, but her work with the Judgment Day, bringing up Judgment Day, I think she brings and gives Judgment Day another level that the guys in Judgment Day don't give you, especially as far as from a charisma standpoint. It's her and Dominic Mysterio that actually give you that lift in Judgment Day, as opposed to the other members of the Judgment Day. I think are, as far as that's concerned, even though Dominic Mysterio loses most of the time against big name opponents, and Rhea Ripley is the women's champion. But I think that she is absolutely the most incredible part of Judgment Day. So
And I like how they've used her to be the glue, like when there's been dissension in the ranks. Like
yes,
I really have appreciated how they've had her be stepping in as a strong leader and get it together. We have a
yeah,
tag team title match, blah blah blah. So I agree. Rhea Ripley was up on my list of
yeah.
possible candidates as well.
She has been an incredible wrestler. Definitely better than virtually any wrestler out there this year. I mean, you put her work up against as far as many of the others that are out there. I'd say for the women out there, I think she's been the rock of the WWE right now, as far as it's concerned. As far as not the Rock character, but the Rock steady. And what you said about Seth Rollins, I say about her for the women's division as well. But Io Sky definitely, and Gilia, they both deserve consideration. Tony Storm deserves consideration as well. Tremendous performances from women's wrestling this year. But the men's wrestler that I thought, this one was a tough one for me to choose. I really thought that there were a lot of issues coming into it. The WWE, like you said, with Seth Rollins, I just think that the fact that they have not been able to, or did not push him as a world champion, because they had to give him the belt because of Roman Reigns. I just think that that holds me against him. Cody Rhodes, because he couldn't get ultimately the job done as far as at the highest stage. He may next year, but as not yet, not as of yet. LA Knight, same thing. When it all comes down to it, my wrestler, even though he's with a company that still doesn't know how to book around him yet, but he has done virtually everything that we asked so many, yeah, actually years ago, when you and I first started talking about this guy's promise and what we thought they should make him a champion, make him a champion, make him a champion. Well, they made him a champion, and he's embraced it. And he recently made comments that, as far as that everyone has fatigue in pro wrestling, and he understands that maybe that there's some on him, but it's really hard to tell because MJF still makes things interesting with the way his persona is, his interviews, and the fact that he did what he needed to do to build up his physique and also create matches out there that can interest and keep audiences. He has put his end of the bargain. He has held up his end of the bargain. It's up to AEW in the next year to hold up theirs.
Agreed. Even, and I mean, I'm not sure of this. I'm just speculating. I'm sure he doesn't like being a babyface, but they've made him a babyface, and
Yeah,
he's done the best with that he could. Is it
yeah.
great? No, but he's done much better with it than if they had done that with some other heels.
Yeah,
Okay.
he doesn't like being the good guy. He wants to be the bad guy, and he wants to be the villain. He calls himself the devil for a reason. Now, of course, the devil storyline, aka
Mm.
Black Scorpion, whatever, you can have it, you can take it. And of course, the way it ended up is not really that fun, not really that interesting. Wasn't really shock value. It was like, okay, pretty much what everybody thought. Okay, move on. But yeah, what they're giving him is not great, but it's not because of his efforts. And I think he's been overall for me the standout for the year in
Mm-hmm.
2023.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So, my friend, before we head on out, as we do a little bit of overrun here, before we head on out, I want to go ahead and hear your predictions for 2023, and then we are going to go 2020. I want to hear your predictions for 2024, and also, as well, of course, a plug for the PVD cast, my friend.
Overrun. We're like AEW on a Wednesday
Yes, we
night.
are on overrun, my friend.
Okay. My first prediction is I predict that there will be a third big promotion that starts this year, whether that is the NWA, whether that's MLW, OVW, GCW, TNA, whether it's one of those groups find a way to expand and make wrestling interesting for the fans, or if it's a brand new company that starts. And again, I know it takes a lot to do that, but I think that there's so much talent out there, Gerald, that there's got to be another big quote unquote promotion for guys and gals to find work. We need one more. Heck, probably need two more. But I really feel like I predict that something's going to happen where you're going to have one of these existing promotions get bigger and expand, or you're going to find a third promotion being started by somebody somewhere.
Okay. All right. Any more thoughts, my friend? Any more predictions that you have on there?
Well, yeah, I do. I actually have three.
Okay.
I think that this one is by no means a prediction. I think this is going to happen. I think we see the return of Sasha Banks to the WWE. I think that there's been some hints and some chatter and some squabble that she has been talking to the WWE. I would not see that Mercedes Moné or Sasha Banks returns to the WWE.
Okay. Fair enough. Even though like he said, he tweeted out that a former WWE champion is going to appear at their pay per view. Yet I hear other stories and other written reports that the talks have ended between
Hmm.
Mercedes Monet and WWE. So we'll see who is right on that as we go forward. But that's a possibility. She will end up either at a big company. That's as far as AEW or WWE. Any last predictions, my friend, before I go ahead and
Last,
run?
yeah, last one here that's going to probably raise the ire of some folks, but I think we're going to see more front office departures from AEW, and I think that's going to cause 2024 to be partly a rebuild year for the company. I think that when you have QT Marshall and you have Mrs. Massey, I don't remember her first name, Matt Jackson's wife
Mm-hmm.
leaving, and you had Cody leave a couple of years ago, and you have some production people leaving. I think there's going to be some more front end departures. I honestly, I would not be surprised if the Young Bucks decide to depart.
Okay, fair enough. They end up on WWE television, that would be a very strange thing indeed. Absolutely.
Oh, yes, it would. Yes, it
Would they
would.
even get a push is what I would ask. So
Uh, I don't know.
yeah, yeah, we'll see on that one. But my three predictions, first off, if MJF has not signed an extension with AEW, because there's some people say that there's a possibility it's already signed. MJF has always said that MJF is not signed yet to any organization beyond 2024 and that his contract will expire in 2024. Remember, he made a big
Hmm.
thing about, decision MJF 2024. I think that if that's the case, I think that the custody battle will be huge and it will be a major news topic if that is the case and he has not signed an extension. We'll know sometime in 2024 if that's the case. If there's some rumors, innuendo, if that really starts to heat up, we'll know that that's the case. And WWE, I think, would put a lot of pressure on MJF as far as signing him. They would be very smart to because of what he could bring to their future for that company. So I definitely think that if he is available as a free agent in 2024, as he has said in the past, that it will be a huge custody battle between him, them, AEW, and maybe another party, like you said as well. So we'll see what happens there. WWE will try to regain the bragging rights for the largest audience ever. I don't think they can stand the fact that the 81,000 paid is going to stick with it as the largest pro wrestling audience that has paid attendance. We're not counting the North Korean and I guess other venues, like mainly North Korean venue that was not so paid attended. It was mandatory to go ahead and see. I think that, yeah, WWE will make an all-out effort next year in 2024 to provide a paid audience higher than what you're seeing with all AEW All Out, All In at London. So I will say that, and then number three will be, it's just ego when it comes right down to it. It's just ego, my friend. One of the smaller promotions that are known to us, as far as whether it's GCW, whether it's TNA/Impact, whether it's NWA, whether it's MLW, when their money runs out from the settlement with WWE, one of those promotions will either try to go ahead and absorb with another promotion or close. I think
Mm.
as costs in our living get rates go higher, I think it's going to be harder and harder with some of these smaller promotions to remain small promotions that provide a viable living for themselves and for their wrestlers. And I just think at some point in time, we're going to see one of them shut down. I think next year you might see one close its doors.
Mm.
That's a thought right there. Your thoughts on that before we head on out?
Man, that's unfortunate. Like I said, I hope that it expands, but
Mhm.
you make a valid point. As production costs go higher and higher and higher,
They don't get cheaper, my friend.
no, they don't. They don't. And
Unless you start doing it with cell phones, my friend. The iPhone, they always brag about how, cinematic they are. So,
I hope that's not the case, but I can see that happening. I can definitely see one of those companies going under.
all right, my friend, it's been a great time talking the year-end awards for pro wrestling in 2023 and our predictions for 2024. But before we head on out, it's time to do the hard pitch on what you are talking about on the PVD cast, my friend.
Well, I've been on a hiatus for the holidays, so I've taken a couple weeks off to recharge the batteries and get some things squared away and get some guests lined up. But I would really urge you to go over to pvdcast.com or wherever you find podcasts, find the PVDcast, because my last episode for 2023, the one that I posted on December 14th, I had the opportunity to sit down and speak with a guy that many of us know from the world of professional wrestling, Sonny Beach. It's episode number 409. Sonny runs down his career being, whether we're talking about his time in the WWF, Herb Abrams UWF, GWF, All Japan, Stampede, talks about his thoughts on the current product, shares some great stories. So if you love wrestling, I definitely urge you to check it out. And I was so humbled and honored to interview or sit down and chat with Sonny. And honestly, I learned stuff that I thought I knew, and he dropped some knowledge on me that I was unaware of. So that tells you what a great episode it is. So again, it's episode 409, pvdcast.com or wherever you find great podcasts. New episode coming January 4th. So I won't reveal who that is just yet, but just check out the social medias for yours truly, and I'll be posting it soon.
Awesome, my friend. It is the PVD Cast. Please go ahead and check it out today, wherever you get your podcasts or the pvdcast.com. Well, my friend, we've got more to talk about in the year ahead. We've already actually made plans around as far as some themes that for our upcoming shows here as far as the first part of next year. But any last thoughts, my friend, on a year gone by in 2023 before we head on out?
There were some ups, there were some downs, and I'm pretty optimistic that 2024 is going to give us some great wrestling action. And just watch what you like to watch and enjoy pro wrestling, folks.
All I will say is this: a future without a McMahon owned WWE will be a strange year indeed. So for John Orlando from the PVD Cast, it's Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much for watching this. Truly appreciate it. It's the State of Pro Wrestling. Hopefully you will catch all of our shows, plus of everything that we do at the Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and of course the PVD Cast and the Lakers Fast Break. Truly appreciate you joining us. Looking forward to catching you next time as the State of Pro Wrestling. We've already tapped out for this time. We'll go ahead and make sure we tag back in the next time for the State of Pro Wrestling. Thanks so much for joining us, and have yourself a great day.